Hello, I'm Jim Miller, and I'm here with Ron Bowers. The Flip Side starts right now. Welcome to the show. Tonight we are pleased to have back as a panelist Mr. Ronald Bowers. Ron, welcome. It's been too long, my friend.
You know, I've always enjoyed the camaraderie here, the setup here, and the fighting of the bugs and things. You know, on occasion that
you felt the outer box beetles that are in the studio this time of year, and then you fight me. But on the issues,
it's great to be back. I'm glad you called. That Terrence and Reggie had the night off, and I'm glad to attempt to fill their shoes.
So, Ron, you know, you have been in public life. You have been in the public focus, but you have also been a student of Washington County and the city and the municipalities, aside from Hagerstown, throughout at least as long as I've known you, which I think we decided early was 20, 30 more years.
Yes.
You have a lot of institutional knowledge. And as much as I'd like to disagree with you sometimes and perhaps even often, what you say is not wrong. And I can point to several issues on that. We are, you know, every election cycle they say this is going to be the most important election cycle of our lifetime. I don't think this is necessarily going to be the most important election cycle of our lifetime. I do, however, think that this election cycle presents opportunities that we don't see all the time. We have 2 county commissioners that are retiring. We have a facility that they want to fit out in Williamsport that is polarizing our community. And we have other issues in our communities, not just in the county, but in some of the municipalities. Talk to me about your take. Let's start out with the county commissioner's race. Talk to me about your take on what could impact the county commissioner's race from the standpoint of everything else that's going on locally, statewide, and nationally.
Anytime you have a change of people dropping out, whether they retire, whether they take other jobs, drop out and start with a new board, selecting a new board, it becomes a very difficult thing, because what we're losing in this county is one of the most important things that I've talked about my entire career: institutional memory. When you have all new planning directors, when you have new zoning administrators, when you have brand new county administrators, when you have the different folks in the city's pretty stable, but the county, they move a lot of people around. And when you lose institutional memory, you fight some battles that's not necessary. And that gives me pause to look at this election a little bit different this time, because there's fights inside of political parties on who should be doing what. It's not across party lines as much as it is inside of different political parties. And when you have that comes for a different dynamic. So in June, that will be separated out, and after June, the election and the primary, then we'll be able to look at who has made a case to move into the final 10 people, because for the first time in a long time, there will be a primary of Democrats and Republicans. And with that primary, you know, there will be a primary. That means there will be a general election also of 2 political
Well, we've always
parties.
had Democratic.
You did, but last time you had maybe 2 Democrats that were there, or maybe 3. You didn't have 5. So there's a difference. Then it's how the chamber, the Greater Hagerstown Committee, and other people put together forums that get out what the issues are. We tend to go on personalities and not on issues in this county.
Or in name recognition.
Yes, name.
And by the way, I don't think we're alone in that issue.
No, but this time that's going to change a little bit. Some of those names aren't there any longer. But you have some of the same names that are there. However, the difference is we've had a pretty drastic impact of people not having the ability to talk at they can talk at a hearing, but at a county commissioner meeting under under comments or citizens' participation, we've kind of taken that out because of circumstances. Are those circumstances warranted to cut off discussion and debate? I don't think they are. I think that the county has been short-sighted in how they've dealt with moving forward on having people talk about what they had on their mind, even for 3 minutes. There were times that we did it back years ago that you got some darn good ideas. There's a lot of smart people in the community that's got positive things to say. And in saying them, you can pick up on some new ideas. So this campaign's going to be on more than just issues. It's going to be on how they conducted themselves, how they didn't open up to different, whether it's the ICE facility, whether it's Fort Ritchie, whether it's Cascade at the Dollar General store, or whatever the issue is being able to have it open up to have people talk about it and not unnecessarily cut people off that were talking about issues and somebody decided, well, that's not germane to the subject when they only had 3 minutes to talk anyway. So there's just been some things that happened, and it's going to open up this election, in my opinion, more than the election has ever been opened.
Well, I would agree with you on that, although maybe for some different reasons. I think frankly, and this is an issue, the ICE facility, I think that has the ability to impact the election in the following ways. There are going to be those, and first of all, let me say, and I think the numbers will prove this out, Republicans don't necessarily need Democrats or independents to get elected, all else being equal. Democrats in Washington County absolutely need some crossovers from independents or from Republicans to get elected. But if you put Democrats and independents together, they're going to win.
And if you put them together with a national scene that is in disarray right now, there's a lot of people not going to show up at the election. And there's a lot of Republicans that may not show up in the county commissioner race.
The centrist, I think, if I were to guess, my guess would be it would be the centrists who may not show up.
I disagree with you.
Okay, tell me why.
I think the centrists will show up. I think the centrists, I'm a centrist, and I think the centrists have gotten a raw deal over the years. I don't think the centrists show up. I'm not left woke, and I'm not right MAGA. I'm into center. So with what all is going on in the federal, what all goes on in the state, I see a different view of how the voters will turn out in 2026.
So this ICE facility, in my mind, the way that impacts the election is as follows. You're going to have what we'll call the MAGA Republicans, or that are going to support ICE. They're going to support this facility. They're going to support everything to do with this immigration issue till the end of the earth, right?
No.
Well, hold on.
No, you asked me yes or no. I said no. I don't think they will.
Okay,
go ahead.
Let me finish my thought process. You have the centrists that may support it or may not. And you have the Democrats, and some of them may support it, but probably more than not are not going to support it. So that's the first thing. Here's the problem, though. It's not just about whether you support this ICE facility, in my mind. It's about whether you support it being built in your backyard. And everybody wants prisons, right? Because we got to lock the bad people up. But nobody wants a prison in their backyard. So how many of the MAGAs, how many of the centrist Republicans or rhinos, how many of the independents, and how many of the Dinos, or Democrats in name only, if that's a thing, are going to fluctuate their vote based on that? Because clearly the current Board of County Commissioners has come out overwhelmingly in favor of the ICE facility and anything that the Immigration and Customs Service is doing.
You're going to get into that in another block, right?
Yes, I am.
I look at it a little bit different as what you're saying. I'll take the flip side. I see people that, I have friends that talk about the ice facility, and I listen to the comments they make. What they don't talk about is the effect it's going to have. They don't talk about the specifics of what we have to go through. And I know in another block, we'll get into some really specifics. But I see this election being election of a reason. What aren't we getting from our elected officials now? And I don't think we're getting leadership from our elected officials, from either the 5 county commissioners or the county administrator. I think the institutional memory of the county administrator lacks tremendously. And I think as the county commissioners operate in their different functions, you need that solid county administrator to keep things together, to keep things organized, to make sure that the train stays on the track. And we always talked about 3 things: runways, railways, and roadways, and how they are dealt with, infrastructure-wise, etc. So all of those things I see this time with the lack of water. We still don't have water. And how many years have we been talking about water? How many years have we talked about sewer? How many years have we talked about different things that now today we still need them? You had a fire the other night, and what happened at the fire? They didn't have enough water to fight the fire. If we had a fire, 2 major fires at a time in Washington County, we would have a hard time fighting it. So I think this time, letting things go the way they have been let go is going to have a repercussion on the elected officials in office.
Let me ask you this question. One of the other things that is my opinion about elections is sometimes we just tire of candidates. We elect the same people over and over again for X number of terms, and then we say, yeah, it's time for a change, having nothing to do with anything other than maybe, yeah, it's time for a change. And if you look at our current Board of County Commissioners, John Barr has served 4 terms. Jeff Klein has served 4 terms. Is that something you see, and was that part of what affected you when you were a county commissioner? Did people just say, oh, Ron Bowers, I've seen enough of that guy?
Well, in fact, they did, because I was always vocal. I was always on the radio. I was always on TV. I was in other places. I said a lot of things that irritated a lot of people, but I did my homework before I did it. And we have many, many people. I'm going to tell you what. The Chamber of Commerce, the Greater Hagerstown Committee, and all the business people around Hagerstown need to do a more effective job of having organized candidate forums for people to get a chance to hear them, not see them, because people won't go to see them. People's not going to pay $50 to go see somebody sit on the stage someplace and talk. They need to be set down and going through an interview almost individually. Maybe they could pull them all together with specific questions. We do not answer the questions to folks running for county commissioner or any other office in this county anymore. They're not there. And the Chamber of Commerce has got to do a better job, in my opinion. Sorry, Paul, but they need to do a better job on bringing people together in forums.
Okay. I've got more to talk about it with respect to the election. I know we want to get into the ICE facility on a deep dive. I know we want to talk about Fort Ritchie, and I know we want to talk about other things that are going on in Washington County. But let's take a break, and when we come back, we will have a little bit more on the election, and then we'll get into the ICE facility. Stay with us. We'll be back after this break. Welcome back. Well, once again, we're here with Ron Bowers, who's our returning special guest / panelist. Ron, thank you again for being here.
Sure thing. Thanks, Jim.
We want to continue our conversation about the upcoming midterm elections. So, Ron, what else, in your view, is going to impact the elections? And let's expand a little bit beyond county commission. I mean, the school board, the sheriff's race, although I think personally, my opinion, the incumbent sheriff's going to be a hard man to beat. Any thoughts on sheriff? Let's start there.
Oh, I like Sheriff Albert. I think he's done a fantastic job.
And he had big shoes to fill.
Yes.
Let's be clear about that.
Yes, but you have to remember another thing, too. Those big shoes came out and supported the Sheriff Albert. And, you know, when big shoes, you know, I was on the board of county commissioners when we found this young, long-haired hippie, and his name was Mullendore, and we put him in our drug program, and he was a narcotics, in the narcotics task force. And he grew from the very basics, from being in Boonesboro to being in that narc task force, up to be sheriff. And then he supported Sheriff Albert. And I think Sheriff Albert is even-keeled. I think he has a lot of support around.
Well, and I think he has support from the community that I've seen, but more importantly, or equally important, I think he's got support from his staff and his deputies. I hear nothing but good comments from the sheriff's deputies that I talk to around Sheriff Albert.
Well, you know, I've got friends over the state as well, Hartford County and different places, and I know some you know, police folks, sheriff's departments around the state. He gets along well, you know, around the state of Maryland as well. You need to be able to collaborate with the other 23 jurisdictions when you're in law enforcement.
So let's talk about some other. So what about the Board of Education? Let's go there. What are your thoughts? I mean, clearly, the notion last time with the ouster of Peter Bickford and Stan Stauffer, they didn't want any Democrats on the board. Do you think that still will be the case? I mean, we've got a Democratic incumbent, and I know it's
bipartisan.
Yeah, well, yeah, nonpartisan, but we all know that minutes after the final list of candidates, the Democratic Central Committee and the Republican Central Committee do what? Publish a list.
Yes.
So do you think that will be as much an issue this term as it was last?
I don't see it changing. I know that, first of all, I don't like the school board. Let me explain. You tell me what the school board is, Jim.
I don't understand your question. What is the school board?
Yeah, what is the
It's
school
the
board?
governing body for the Washington County
No,
Public
the school
Schools.
board is the superintendent and all the staff. The elected Board of Education is the one we're talking about.
Okay, yes.
Too many people interpret the school board as the Board of Ed, that they set everything. That's not the way it happens. They acquiesce to what the superintendent and staff bring to them to do. And a lot of times in those issues, and I know years ago when there was bitter arguments on the school board, there was 95% of the time they agreed with each other. It was that other couple of percent of times that they didn't. So it's what is the issue of the day going to be? Is it going to be books? What's it going to be? I have heard, now that Superintendent Sovine is leaving, I haven't really heard of major issues at the school board. I don't know if you have or not.
I have not.
And without those major issues, what impact will the Teachers Association have, you know, with what happens in the classroom? You know, the maintenance of effort deal and how we deal with the different problems. I hear so many things that people wish that their kids were taught that they're not. And some days I think there needs to be a refocus on some of the basics that our children should be taught that maybe the state doesn't want to deal with. But I think jurisdictionally within Washington County, there should be some major things that we can change that would help us deal with student problems more. There's an awful lot of students that with only one parent, with the problem of not having a place to sleep, with the problem of food. How many Title I schools do we have now in the county? So if we look at how many Title I schools, you know, it used to be you have a couple of Title I schools. Now how many do we have? I'm not sure exactly how many we have, but it creates problems. So I think there are things out there, but to delineate the elected Board of Education, I think we need to do more about what is the elected Board of Education's ideas on improving education and not coming from the Democratic Central Committee or the Republican Central Committee, but coming from, you know, those running for school board.
Yeah. I think we have 8 Title I schools
8.
in Washington County, I think.
And that's increased.
I can't speak to that.
And that gets down to, you know, to our dynamics of the wealth of our citizens.
All right, so next issue. Let's deep dive on local development and land use. And we've seen a lot of warehouses go up, and now we see a warehouse that they want to turn into an ice facility. That's obviously been held up by a recent lawsuit, and that lawsuit, in my opinion, was strengthened today by the fact that the Maryland Department of Environment said there are absolutely insufficient water and sewer, and they said water specifically, availability to support this type of facility. What say you on that?
Today, I think the Maryland Department of the Environment had a case before a district court judge, and that case was carried out.
Right.
And in that case, the defense, the Department of Justice people, totally went into the case unprepared. They went into it unprepared because of what reason? To begin with, as a former elected official, there were 2 different times I supported, once Governor Hughes on building a prison here, and once when we had to build a detention center on Maryland, you know, where it's located right now. And in doing that, I understand what it is. And I listen to my friends talk about the ICE detention center, the ICE facility. In all candor, the things that they talk about is their political view and not the view of what it takes to run the facility, you know, in running the facility. If you can recall, over the years, the Wright Road pumping station has been an issue since the 80s. We had a sewer moratorium on halfway. We could not expand the Valley Mall until that Wright Road pumping station was dealt with. The Wright Road pumping station took sewer from Wright Road to the Lockwood plant on the Potomac River in Williamsport. And that's how we had to get that totally improved. Years later, one of my downfalls was supporting the building of the Conicajig wastewater treatment facility. In building that facility, that Wright Road pumping station then would no longer pump the sewer to Lockwood sewer plant because there wasn't. They would pump it back to the new sewer facility we built on Elliott Parkway. The detention center's proximity to that pumping station right now, 200 yards at most. And all of that water and sewer. So you're talking, they say, well, we're only talking 500 people. Well, they were talking 1,500. So with 1,500 people with water and sewer going into a place that's already, they have problems with that pumping station now. What nobody's talking about, and this is one of the reasons I hear the county administrator continually talk about this, is the infiltration of stormwater that gets into the lines coming from halfway, coming from the different places to get into that pumping station to go back into the Conicajig wastewater treatment plant. If you don't fix the mass problems that we have, you add 1,500 people there, you've got a massive problem with the pumping station to take it back to the Conicajig. Why didn't we do the homework before? As those guys testified today, I would suppose that legal counsel for the Department of Justice probably won't have a job tomorrow because they were there totally unprepared. And being unprepared and not having the facts and not going through, you don't do 3 environmental inspections in a day and buy the building the next day. This whole thing has been by the county administrator. Well, this is beyond our control. We can't do anything with the federal government.
But isn't it, there is a portion of this, if not a large portion, that is beyond their control.
Is it?
Yeah.
If you sit back and say it's beyond their control, you're right. They've still got to follow environmental law. They still have to follow infrastructure. They still have to have the key things done. Talk about it. We've had no public discussion on it, no public debate, nothing.
I'm not going to argue your point that there's been far too little discussion, but here's the counter to that. Number one, how many people are interested? Until it becomes real, we live in a society where the majority of people, although they do plenty of commenting on Facebook, they really don't follow the facts.
I'll be honest with you. I've got friends on both sides. They both care. The friends on the side that say just put it in, they're talking politically. But when I talk to them privately, God, I didn't know that. I didn't know there was a problem with the infiltration of water infiltration into the plant. I didn't know all of these different problems were there. Do it right, get something out of it.
But
don't roll over and play dead because it's the federal government.
Too. I agree with that 100% too. But I would argue the people on the other side that are dead set against it, a lot of that is just politics as well. I don't think most people share your level of knowledge about what the specific problems are relative to that station.
Jim, they didn't want us to build the landfill out where it is right now. They didn't want us to build a sewer plant. They didn't want us to build a whole bunch of different things. We had public hearings. We talked about it. We gave the people a chance to talk. Give people a chance to talk on both sides.
Again, I'm not
show
arguing
them
that point.
what can do, and you will bring people together more than you will separate.
Okay. Well, I'm not arguing the point that we were lacking on.
Well, we rolled over and played dead. Come on.
I won't go that far, but okay.
Then we come back in and say we won $381 million from the federal government on A, B, C, and D. That should have been worked out, talked about.
We should have the rest of 81 in that package.
There you go.
All right. What other development, local development and land use, is the warehouse thing going to be an issue?
I don't like to call them warehouses. They're a lot of them's doing far more than being a warehouse.
But a lot of them are warehouses.
What's a $700,000 warehouse paying taxes? $700 million warehouse paying taxes.
I have no idea.
$7 million. Okay. So that $72 million warehouse that the federal government paid $102,400,000 for, that would and then put in another contract of $113 million more. They gave the contract out to build on to the $104 million. So you're going to have a $215 million building. That's going to be $1.9 to $2.1 million loss a year in taxes.
Okay. But okay.
Okay. So go out to the one on Creighton Boulevard, Pennsylvania Avenue, and Showalter Road. It's one of the largest food warehouses, refrigerated warehouses, that Amazon has on the East Coast. It's not, when you go over to Con Air, when you go over to the refrigeration one that's in the city of Hagerstown, but is next to the Review and Herald Publishing Company, they all pay into the tax base. I would rename what we call these big buildings. They're all not warehouses. Some of them, yes. But again, we put no restrictions on them for alternate use when it's not a warehouse.
All right, you get the last word on that. We are out of time in this segment. We're going to come back and hopefully we'll get to some more topics. Stay with us. We'll have more of the flip side after the break. Welcome back. Once again, we're here with Ron Bowers, and we're talking midterm elections, or at least a little bit. We're going to get into some other topics here as part of this segment as well. Ron, let's turn our attention from an election perspective to the economy, jobs, and cost of living. We had a slight dip in gas prices for a little while. Well, we had a dip. I won't call it a slight dip. Food costs have not gone down substantially. In fact, in some cases, they've gone up, maybe in many cases for some necessary items. We have concerns about taxes. We have continuing increase of fees in the state of Maryland. We have state budget deficits that are filtering down and putting more pressure on the county and municipalities, and any number of what I'll call pocketbook issues. What are your thoughts on how those might impact the election, and which of them do you think are going to be the most important to voters?
Is that before or after the war started?
Well, I mean, clearly after.
No, give me which is it?
Well, I mean, I think it's before. I think we saw the dip in the gas prices before, and now they're just through the roof. I think that the food has never gone down as people expected it to do.
So you're looking at the midterms, but you're also looking how does that affect people locally?
Yes, and how will that affect their vote specifically?
That is going to be a very good question on how it affects a vote, because the other day I thought, because I did see a reduction in the taxes I paid this year. When I did my taxes, I think, the administration said there was tax cuts, and I did see a tax cut. Until the other day, I got my oil bill. My oil bill had almost doubled in what it was. Not because of what I used, but because of how much it was. It was over $5 a gallon for home heating oil. People was only going to put up with that for a certain amount of time.
Well, I mean, they don't have a choice, but the way they're not going to put up with it, I would argue, is with their vote. But even with their vote, that's not something you can turn back around in a day. If the Strait of Hormuz were completely open and Iran was allowed to send their oil, which is, being cut off at this point in the oil supply chain, it's still not going to drop back down to,
Are you
$2.
advocating that we don't charge the world prices for what oil we produce and gas we produce and get out of the world market and keep it here?
I'm not advocating any such thing.
Why not?
Well, I think...
Why do we have our oil prices and gas prices on the international market?
Well, I'm sure
for people to make money.
Right.
Okay, so people are making money. Sure, you're going to see, there was one time, not long ago in an election, 2 years ago, less than 2 years ago, that people said, enough is enough. Where are we today? We still have a problem. How will that turn around in Washington County, though? Well, will that affect it here?
Yeah, and I don't know. And here's the other thing. Some of this can turn on a dime, and if things get straightened up, we have very short memories as a country. And, we can, if all of this gets resolved in the next couple of months, it may not impact the election at all.
That's true. And then it may go from the Straits of Hormuz to the Red Sea. I mean, there's all kind of things that we can open up or has been opened up that wasn't there before. So now, will the dynamics change? I think they will. And in what way will they do? I think you're going to be looking for some people that are running for public office. It's not in there for the name recognition. This is not in there to get their name and picture on Facebook, or not in there for specific personal type reasons, but people that actually want to do the job, learn how for an example, learn how people that need help can get their help, but realize you need the money for the programs to help people. We haven't talked about housing. We haven't talked about so many of the different things that we need.
Well, and housing is critical. That's a good place to go.
And the infrastructure.
Right.
So you have so much that's out there that meets the eye. I said it again, the Chamber of Commerce and the business community needs to put this election on a pedestal that you can hear your candidate. Maybe the business community's not the ones that needs to do it. Well, maybe somebody else ought to put it out there.
Well, I can tell you for sure, and I think this is public knowledge, and if not, I'll apologize to our host here, Antietam Broadband, but I know they've signed up to do some broadcasts, I think in the general election, before the general election.
Yeah.
So, that'll be one source that will be good and will give people an insight. But I agree with you 100%. I'd like to see a lot more candidate forums, especially at the local level.
And there's good people out there. You don't have to just to be pro-business to be a good political person.
No, but arguably, I understand why the chamber's focus on the candidate forums are largely business issues, because that's who they represent. And the hope is that that will roll down, if business is successful, that will roll down and help the citizenry be successful.
And how's that been working out over the
Well,
decades?
I don't know. I'm not smart enough to make a judgment on that.
But as you see it, as what they do to roll downhill, and what the chamber does a great job. But you still need the infrastructure. We're sitting here looking at a $300 million water plant that we haven't even talked about here yet.
Right. One of the things that's interesting about Washington County, and there are other counties in Maryland that have this same issue, we have an interesting mix of rural, industrial, and commuter populations. So economic priorities might vary widely among our constituency. In your mind, looking at those three different groups, what do you see as important? Let's start out with the rural community. What is important to the rural communities? What do they want from the government that they may or may not be getting today?
Probably get the government out of their pocketbooks and out of regulations. And I've watched people in regulations, some of the most ridiculous things on regulations, where you come up and somebody will say, well, you got to do this. You go back, you've got it done. Oh, well, we didn't tell you had to do this and this. I have a personal experience with somebody running for an elected office, and they've gone to the election board, and it's like the target keeps changing. And you can't do that. And it's like with inspections. People go to get an inspection. They come in, they do the inspection. Well, you didn't do this, this, and this. Well, you didn't tell me. So again, it depends on who's running your government. It depends on what the county administrator does with your county commissioners, along with the city administrator. But don't forget, there's 8 other municipalities too that have to fit in. How you work with all of them. I think we've lost touch with governance at a local level and dealing with all 9 incorporated municipalities, plus the county, because we face some of the most serious issues you'll ever want to face in this coming election.
What about the commuter population? What's important to them?
Being able to get down the road without finding a wreck every couple miles, without having the 70 problem, or without having the Interstate 81 problem. It's getting to work on time. How do you do that? You know, at nights the roads are nobody's on the roads. And at morning time, look at how busy they are. Is there a new type of traffic pattern that we can do? What did they do going across the Bay Bridge years ago? They opened up the other side of the Bay Bridge to go over. Okay, so you have 1 lane bringing them back and 3 lanes taking them over. I don't know what the answer is, but I know we're not dealing with the answer.
Okay. What about immigration? Immigration obviously is the hottest topic, well, used to be until we got into a war with Iran, was the hot topic for the last year, right, or more. What do you see, what are you hearing locally about that?
I think, I've heard a lot of people, you know, they get really fired up on immigration. I don't have a problem with that bad person. I don't have problems with putting that bad person in. But don't develop a quota of 3,000 or 3,500 people, and you have to have a quota met every day, so you're collecting people that's not in a problem, but because you have a quota, you have to get so many people off of the street. That is wrong. So how do you do that? We've got the border shut off. We've got different people, you know, in our community. I think it was a problem, but I think the current administration has dealt with the border problem. They've used the police, they've used the ICE officials, they've used, law enforcement, but they've also misused, a lot of that law enforcement has misused their authority, and that's what's got a lot of people upset. When you put the quota on and said you got to have so many a day, then you create problems.
At the state level, there are state-level issues that obviously spill over to the local constituencies: taxes, state spending, state deficit, environmental policy, redistricting and this whole notion of removing the one Republican district from the state of Maryland and political control debates. How do you think that impacts our appetite at the state level, and can we do anything about it?
You know, I never ran for state delegate, but I was appointed state senator for a while when Vic Cushwell moved into to a higher job. And I went through that interview process, and Schaefer put me in. Well, Don Munson rightly pointed out that he can't have resident in the district long enough, so then I couldn't run. So pretty much stayed out of state politics. And what I don't want to see locally is getting involved in a bunch of state politic issues that we have no control on whatsoever, because I know there's certain county commissioners that'll bring up one issue that's running for county commissioner, that'll bring up one issue, and if everybody don't agree on that issue, he doesn't like what you stand for. And a county commissioner has nothing to do with it. Stay with the county commissioner issues, let the state issues with the Senate and the House to deal with them, and the governor, not local county government.
But the county government is dependent on the state government because of our
Commissioner form of government.
Right, yeah. We are one of, what, 2 counties in the state?
There's only a handful, yes.
That are still commissioner form of
Yes.
governor. So, I mean, arguably, first of all, there is a need to interface. And secondly, wasn't it you that was just advocating for the fact that regardless of the fact we have no control or little control over the federal thing with this ICE facility, that we need to stand
No, I
up
didn't
and
say
shout,
that.
shout
They've
to
said
the-
that they don't. I don't agree with them.
Okay.
I do not agree with the people that say, threw their hands up and made a motion, because I watched the motion, and second, that they were going to support the facility. I would not have done that.
Okay. We have about 30 seconds left in this segment. Let's talk for just a minute, and then we're going to come back and talk about Fort Ritchie. Let's talk about Westmore, Governor Westmore. He has waning popularity, according to all of the recent polls, but he still has aspirations, as I understand it, nationally, even though he may say different at this point. What is your opinion on the job that he is doing? And what is your opinion on his ability to get recognized at a national level?
Do you know, I never really got along with Governor O'Malley. And he was trying to do the same thing. I think you run for governor, you run for governor. I think Governor Moore's done a lot of good things, but I think he's done a lot of questionable things. And I think the political word here in Washington County is not more. We don't want more.
No more.
Yeah, no more. I look at things as to, and specifically in what? What different areas don't you like? Well, you don't like to pay fees? Well, they'll swallow things that happen in the federal government. As soon as it's done in the state government, they raise Cain about it. I don't like the dual standards of how we deal with the feds and how we deal with the state. So when you get into talking about the governor or the president of the United States, whatever, again, county commissioners do not need involved in that debate.
Okay. We're going to end it there. We've got one more segment. When we come back, we're going to talk about Fort Ritchie. I hope you'll stay around for that. I hope you'll come back with us for that. The Flip Side will be back after these commercial messages. Stay with us. Welcome back. Once again, we're here with Ron Bowers. Mr. Bowers, Fort Ritchie, I know that's something you are very excited about, and some of the potential things that are happening up there. A lot of us, because it's in a more or less remote part of the county, we don't always think about it, we don't always see it, but there's a notion that we are going to take an abandoned base and turn it into a livable community. What is your take on what's going on with Fort Ritchie, and tell us some of the things that you know about?
I am very proud of what has happened with Fort Ritchie. I was on that BRAC commission back years ago when we went to Boston, when they were doing away with the bases and that type of thing, on the BRAC Commission to deal with not wanting them to shut Fort Ritchie down. Well, they did anyway. But what has happened there, John Crumpettage has been one of the most dynamic developer individuals that I've ever seen. And if I were the city of Hagerstown, I would be dealing with him and getting him involved down here on some different issues, because I think he can expand what he's doing in his thought process. But if you go there and look, like you like coffee, you like to go out to little coffee shops and stuff, go up to the Greenhouse Cafe, which is the old commander's house right inside the front gate, when they've turned that into a beautiful little coffee shop. And go down to where the finger buildings were and look at the individual people that had put businesses in those finger buildings, and how you can go down the street, come back up and park in the back, and it's very, very well done. And he's done a lot there to upgrade the houses, to rebuild the houses, to put the new water, sewer, redo the houses to make them rentable, leasable, however, what they do, because you can't sell them. And I've watched how he's done that. Well, I was up there a couple of weeks ago, and to my chagrin, some folks came up to me that knew me there from the Cascade area and said, why is the county government, do you remember the county commissioners gave away 63 acres of land to JGBLI and the South Koreans? Remember that happened? Yep. They were, out of Germantown? And watched how that all happened. Without a reverter clause, when they gave it to them, there was no reverter clause. So if they didn't do what they said they were going to do, and we've gone years, suddenly...
We should have been able to take it back.
That should be able to take it back if you're not going to do with it. Lo and behold, there's county employees working up there, okay, doing things in that part of the development. Wonder what it is. Why is there county employees with all kind of trucks, all kind of equipment, and employees doing things with sewer main, or with water lines, or with electricity, or with whatever? Why is that? There's no way that now you can go in and ask a question, or at least pose it so somebody gets back to you. But the county administrator and the county commissioners owe it to the citizens of Washington County. What's going on up at Fort Ritchie now? Crumpettage is just totally out of his bailiwick. This is totally on the 63 acres, and I think a couple of our existing county commissioners was on that board that gave that land away. And when they do that, and then you come back and put county employees, is the county being reimbursed for what they're doing? Are there special grants that they got that was used to be used for something else? Were there public hearings on it? Are there public hearings on what county employees are doing there now? I don't know. And trying to talk about or find out about it, well, you can send an email. I've actually gone to the county administrator when I had a major project going on, and I wanted to build a community kitchen, a major community kitchen, which would deal with getting food out to the communities, okay? Where you would have one major place, and where Goodwill, when Goodwill's new grocery store goes in, any perishable foods and stuff could be used in this, community kitchen to do things, and we could train employees. And I wanted her to talk to the county commissioners, because I'd like to go in and address the county commissioners. I never even heard back from her. And I'm a former county commissioner. I call the county administrator. I don't even get a call back. And it just shows me that lack of experience, the inability to get along with people, keep an even keel, bring people together, make sure things are going right is missing right now. Go ahead.
No, that's fine. I appreciate that. Let's talk about some of the positive things. So there was a community legacy grant in 2026 that is part of a state-backed redevelopment project converting a historic building into a boutique hotel.
Yes.
What do you know about that?
Do you remember us building the wall at Marty Snook Park? Remember we built that 5 stone arch wall?
Yeah.
Out of stone, of course, but it's 5 stone arch, which was a replica of the Price's Mill Bridge. The International Institute of Masonry did that for us for free. Paul Sarbanes, who was then a United States Senator, got the Institute of Masonry from Massachusetts to be in those buildings. They housed those buildings for years. And now with this grant that they have coming in, it is a godsend for what they're going to do to see the plans. You know, there with the lake in the background, another fishing lake right there, right across from Meredith. Meredith has a beautiful building, the wide open fields in front of the castle building, you know, that's historically preserved. And, you know, it's a wonderful idea that's long overdue.
There's also notions of a pharmaceutical medical manufacturing facility that is coming to the site and bringing jobs and perhaps some industrial diversification.
But that, again, comes from the great job that our Washington County our business and economic development folks do under Jonathan Horowitz. Jonathan does a tremendous job there of bringing things together. So being able to work there, but Crumpettage, again, is working on this type of thing. He's got a good staff. He has put things together to ensure that that it does what it was originally intended to do, and that was to house people. You know, people used to say, well, you can't handle the cars. At one time a day, there was 5,000 people worked on that base. They had no problem getting to and from work on the existing roads that are still there.
Right.
So that the traffic patterns, the infrastructure is there. But you've got another problem there. The other problem is the building of the Dollar General store. The Dollar General store is a big deal, you know, and that's under county guidelines right now, and it's happening right at the gates, the front of the gates of the fort, overlooking a historical fort. They want to put a Dollar General in. There again is another short-sighted thing that we do in this county that people don't look at and don't see, but the people of Cascade have galvanized and have a tremendous group that's been working 4 years with their own money to fight something that should not be there.
Yeah,
and they will, the sewer plant as well. They would need sewer from the sewer plant that you know the county still runs.
Yeah, the Dollar General, and again, not my fight, but I think that's contrary to preserving the area's historic character, certainly. Yeah, just my opinion.
For or against?
I am against it.
Amen.
There's a growing number of events that are happening. I think there was an Easter egg hunt that was just happened in April, in this month. And I think there's also some cleanup initiatives and some wellness events. And maybe
4th of July, big
the
time.
fun run.
Yes.
Yeah. Fun run, yes. So, I mean, there's a lot going on there. Anyway, that's all the time we have for tonight. So we're gonna have to cut it off there, Ron. That is all the time we have for tonight. We hope you will like us on Facebook. We hope you will follow us on X. We will hope you send your comments and suggestions to feedback@flipsidetv.com. That's feedback@theflipsidetv.com. Most importantly, join us again next week for another visit to the Flip Side. Good night.